Hello, I am Carrie Kelly, Executive Director of the Arizona Association for Economic Development. Welcome today to AAD's Policy Impact Celebration. We first want to turn it over and welcome Governor Doug Ducey, who will have a few remarks for us to start our event.
Hello, this is Governor Ducey. I'm excited to be with you today to help kick off this year's Policy Impact Celebration. Here in Arizona, we pride ourselves on our responsible, innovative economic policies which create the foundation for our competitive business climate. We've developed policies that create jobs, bolster our infrastructure, and enhance the quality of life for our residents. Take manufacturing, for example. Since 2015, we've created 13,000 new manufacturing jobs, and numerous manufacturers have chosen Arizona to start, relocate, and expand operations. Taiwan Semiconductor, Intel, Electrica, Mechanica, Lucid, and Nikola are just a few companies that have chosen Arizona to build their businesses in the past few years. And that's not the half of it. Since 2015, total manufacturing exports grew by $2.1 billion to a record high $24.7 billion in 2019. The future looks bright for Arizona. Because of our fiscal responsibility and our dedication to growth, Arizona's economy is on an upward trajectory for years to come. I want to thank the Arizona Association for Economic Development for hosting this event and for continuing to promote responsible economic policies in our state. I look forward to seeing what we accomplish together next.
Thank you so much, Governor Ducey, and welcome everyone to AAED's Policy Impact Celebration. I'm Mignon Hollis. I'm the president of AAED and the executive director of the Arizona Regional Economic Development Foundation. Today, we are honoring 3 legislators who have all had a meaningful impact in 2020 on economic development policy. Representative Ben Toma, Representative Frank Pratt, and Senator David Gowan. I also want to extend a thank you to our sponsors, our title sponsor, SRP, capital sponsor, APS, and legislative sponsors, Town of Marana, City of Phoenix, and TEP. Our first 2020 Economic Development Champion is Representative Ben Toma. Representative Toma was the architect of the 2019 Online Retailer Solution and Tax Reform Package and sponsored the renewed Qualified Facilities Tax Credit legislation on the House side. Thank you so much.
My name is Ben Toma. I'm a representative in the State House. I represent District 22, and which is the Northwest Valley. And I also serve as the majority leader now in the 55th legislature. My only interest in getting into public service was really about economic development. That's really what caught my attention. I thought it would be kind of amazing and interesting to be part of shaping the future of the area that I live in North Peoria. That was the hook, you know, and then it was a bit of a travel to get to where I am here, a bit of a journey. But now that I'm here and I've gotten a chance to learn tax policy, which by the way is something I never thought I would learn, but I realized how important it is. It really is very important that you look at everything holistically, including tax policy, other tools, and you learn that people make decisions that are good for them, sometimes in the short term, but often they think long term, as I said before. So I'm honored, really, when anybody notices that what we're doing is good economic development policy. And again, for me, it's always been about the policy more than it is about anything else. It's not. I'm not much of a floor speech guy. I'm not much of a campaigner in that sort of traditional sense. For me, it's about getting things done that make it better and easier to do business and to live in Arizona. In many ways, last year seems like it was ages ago, I was actually trying to think about that, in January of 2020. What was I thinking about? I would say the priorities are probably the same, but the method and the end result would have probably been different in terms of what we tackled and how we went about it to try to improve our competitiveness. I would say overall, Arizona's handled it pretty well, and I think you can tell based on the results. Lots of people are moving here still, continued to move here during the pandemic, and so I think that it's hard to argue with actual results. So I think the governor's done a good job overall in the decisions that have been made, and the fact that we didn't shut down most businesses, and even those that were shut down were open sooner than some of our surrounding states, have put us in a much better position economically. Now, we do have a lot going for us. One, it's a great place to live, right? So that's nice. We don't have natural disasters, and overall the state's managed well. And so because of that, people are willing to make that long-term commitment. Because a lot of times when you're considering, when companies are considering moving here, they're looking at not just what's my tax climate going to be in a year, or what's the economic development space going to look like in 2 or 3 years. I mean, you're talking about some of these large companies that are moving here. They're looking at 10, 20, 30 years down the line. What is it going to look like? And just to be clear, my heart is not necessarily for the large companies, but what happens is when you're able to attract the large companies, lots of other small companies follow. This year in particular, we're looking at some pretty broad economic reforms and tax reforms in particular, tax cuts, to make our competitiveness, to improve our competitiveness considerably over where we currently are. Again, we saw how necessary it is to ensure that we have all the tools in the toolbox, so that we're not just a flyover state, right? They're not going from California, since we're picking on them for a little bit. They're not going straight to Texas or other places that have good economic development tools. Look, Texas shouldn't have anything that doesn't actually have anything that we don't have. I think it's a better place to live here. Just go there, go to Austin in August. It's not good. So just come here. I know August is not great here either, but it's a very different thing. My point is, all joking aside, we really should be just as competitive, if not more so, than some of those states. And so, and the qualified facilities is just one of those tools that's very popular. It's the results have been great. And by the way, I always favor those types of results that are measurable, that are conditional, right? We don't just write them and check and hope it all works out, right? Those are conditional tools, and it's really a partnership between the state, the local cities, municipalities, whoever else is doing something, and also the company that's moving here. And they're saying, we're going to invest this, and we say, great, if you do that, then this will happen. And I think when you have that kind of setup, it makes sense. It avoids any sort of mismanagement, maybe, of some of the funds that we have, and it makes us competitive. And I think we just that is what we have to do in order to ensure long-term benefit. What is the importance of the 2019 Wayfarer remote seller tax package? It's become a very, very important tool, and actually it's the right thing to do, because if you think about it from a competitive standpoint, since we're talking about that, there's lots of brick and mortar stores, physical businesses that are selling various things that were at a disadvantage, and you'd walk into let's pick a company, Home Depot or Best Buy, and you're looking at some sort of electronic device, and then you're going online and buying it because you could get it shipped to your home without paying the tax, which is unfair to our local businesses, and that really shouldn't have happened. Quite frankly, this should have been something that the federal government should have fixed. But once the Supreme Court opened the door for this, then we took a hard look at it, and we worked through it for an entire session. And I got to tell you, there are many that will admit that they probably thought that it was never going to happen because of the complexity that we have in Arizona. We had, at that point, I believe it was 92 different sales tax codes. I'm not talking about rates, I'm talking about entire codes. In the end, I think everybody realized we had to do it. It was the right thing to do. And we worked till the very, very end to make sure that we got it done. And because we got it done, we were in a much, much better place. And we are in a much, much better place, both from a consumer standpoint and from a competitive standpoint and from a governmental standpoint. That's awesome. That's cool. I like it. Little mirror. That's cool.
Congratulations again. Our second 2020 Economic Development Champion is Representative Frank Pratt. Representative Pratt has been a staunch supporter of advancing economic development policy at the legislature for many years, including workforce training programs and assured water supply.
I'm Representative Frank Pratt. I love Arizona and I love the people here. I love the lifestyle. We have a great economy in the sense that a lot of people support the businesses and the economic development that we have here. That makes it really enjoyable. It's a great pleasure to be honored in an area where you like to do the work that you're working on. We help people. We assist in economic development, and we help people's lifestyle. So all of it is it's very enjoyable. We do so many things so well here. We have a great climate. We have a good labor pool. In reality, economic development, we're selling Arizona. So it's our lifestyle that people like. They like the entertainment. They like the ability to do a lot of types of outdoor things. They like athletics, different types of sports. Lifestyle is very important for anybody that wants to come here and work. We've gotten to have a pretty diversified economy. That helps a lot. It's great. We have a great employment base, so there are a lot of people that live there. It's also pretty good in a lot of ways because there are so many different small towns that affordable housing is a little bit easier to get in our area. So it has a lot of advantages too. Mining is very important for Arizona. We still have 2 of the 3 smelters that are in the United States now, right in my district. So the Globe, Miami area and the Ray area, they produce a lot of copper. So copper is big in the copper corridor always. We like to work with them. They're great to work with. They're very supportive to the community. They do a lot of things for the people, help a lot of people out. We work in that area. I mean, it's fun to work in. You like economic development primarily because it's fun. It's what people like to do. I mean, it's their lifestyle. It's what they enjoy. It's everything that they want to be in Arizona for. So we like that. The people that we come in contact with are the most creative and the most economically adjustable. I mean, they think outside the box. I mean, they're people that really can get things done. We don't talk about how much these really mean to us. They always go into our offices. And now we don't have quite the population that goes through our office. This is still a great honor to have this kind of a honor bestowed on you.
Thank you for that. And our final 2020 Economic Development Champion is Senator David Gowan. Senator Gowan has been a champion for infrastructure improvements and also sponsored the Renewed Qualified Facilities Tax Credit.
My name is David Gowan. I'm the Senate Appropriations Chairman, and I'm from Legislative District 14. Our priorities for the state last year with our economy and how it changed was twofold. We were going in looking to continue the healing process from the Great Recession, and then a little recession hit itself, which we call COVID. And from that, we had to do what we call a skinny budget. So we just took what was the year before and placed it forward with some ongoing dollars. And that was our budget basically for last year. And lo and behold, here we are with an economy that seems to be busting it. So Arizona's been able to weather the storm because of the ability of our legislative body with this governor to deregulate and do tax structure that is beneficial to the businesses in our state. And it actually draws other businesses from out of state as well as helps the ones from within. And that's what we've been focusing on, because you can't just worry about the ones coming in. You also have to think about those who stuck it through during the Great Recession. So as we've restructured and brought our state into a realm of relevancy to drawing others, we still have to make sure that the ones here are well kept as well. And through that, we've grown to the third strongest economy in the United States per state. How does Arizona stay competitive to bring in companies to the state is the things we've been doing. Stay on track and stay on target. As I stated before, keeping those regulations down, making sure the tax atmosphere is beneficial to businesses so they can hire people on. And through that process, make sure our families are taken care of. Because if the state is healed, then our families are going to be able to go to work and we're going to have a good life. Being able to bring them in by targeting some tax structures are great just as well. That's how we get these companies coming here instead of flying over us to other states. You just have to continue to do that process. So the qualified tax credit is major. We were fighting against other states, but they chose us for this tax credit, as well as what we have here already, the infrastructure we have, the weather, we have workers through our universities and our community colleges. And we have great community colleges too. We don't talk about that a lot, but we do. And we put people to work through those. We live in a great state, and what we've been able to do in this great state through our regulation process, through our restructuring of our taxes, and we're looking to see a new restructure come for the whole populace. We have so many dollars coming in, and as I was doing a budget this year with my team, we were looking at it and trying to heal the state still, because that Great Recession did a lot of damage to our great state we have here. But through that process, we wanted to heal it and continue to heal it. We have to continue to heal those. But as we were and looking at our budget, I kept looking up on the wall, and I was seeing that deficit clock. You remember, you see that on your phone, and you're thinking, wow, that's just crazy. But I was seeing it the other way. We were getting dollars coming in. That means our citizens are paying a lot for the government they have. So through that, we're actually looking at doing some tax relief for our citizens, because we have that ability. And if they're overpaying, let's give it back. What does it mean to be an economic development champion? Well, I would tell you, it's humbling. I don't come here for awards, and I appreciate it. It's not what I work to. I work for the side, and I guess that's how they come. But I work for my constituency and do my best for my district, my state, because I love my state. And certainly, first off, it's really for my family. I come here to make sure they're free. And as I do that process and make sure Arizona stays great, these things seem to happen. Well, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that. That is beautiful. That is really humbling, and I appreciate this award very much.
All right, congratulations to all of the winners. My name is Michael Jansen. I'm chair of the AAED's Government Affairs Committee and also Economic Development Specialist for the town of Sahuarita. AAED believes in responsible economic development. And this year, our priorities, we had 4 of them, include number 1, funding transportation and broadband infrastructure, particularly smart highways and broadband initiatives into rural Arizona and the I-10 expansion. Number 2, expanding economic development programs to make Arizona more competitive, particularly the angel investment tax credit. Number 3, ensuring a qualified workforce and workforce pipeline for programs such as career and technical education and dual enrollment credits for high school freshmen and sophomores. And then finally, number 4, retaining and modernize existing economic development tools, particularly the quality jobs tax credit, which you heard a little bit from before. And those are our 4 priorities. Next up, we are joined by Representative Hernandez and Senators Bowie and Shope, who will be discussing these priorities and several other policy topics.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for joining us for this year's Policy Impact Celebration. My name is Carrie Kelly, and I am the Executive Director of the Arizona Association for Economic Development. And I am joined today by my co-moderator and AAED policy advocate, Eric Emmerich from the Dorn Policy Group.
Thank you, Carrie. We're also joined by our panelists, State Senator Sean Bowie, State Senator TJ Shope, and State Representative Daniel Hernandez, who will be discussing economic development policy priorities, Arizona's economy, and competitiveness. But before we begin, let's start with some introductions. Gentlemen, would you please share a little bit about yourselves and your districts you represent? Senator Bowie.
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you today. My name is Sean Bowie. I serve in the State Senate. This is my 5th session, representing Legislative District 18, which is in the East Valley. It includes all of Ahwatukee, along with parts of Tempe, Chandler, and Mesa. I'm a previous winner of the Economic Development Champion Award, so always great to spend time with everybody. I serve on the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, along with the Finance Committee and the Commerce Committee. So I spend a lot of time working on economic development issues and ways that we can grow our economy and bring good, high-paying jobs to the state of Arizona. So thanks for having me, and great to be with all of you today.
Thank you, Senator. Senator TJ Shope.
Thanks, Eric. First off, thank you for having me on here today. Like Sean, I'm a previous winner of the Economic Development Award for this organization. But my name's TJ Shope. I represent Legislative District 8. I spent 8 years in the House of Representatives and now in my first year in the state Senate. I live in Coolidge. My district stretches from Casa Grande on the west to Globe on the east, and it 2 counties, 13 incorporated cities, and one of the largest unincorporated communities in the Southwest and Santan Valley. So good sized district, lots of great economic development things going on. And I'm outside of the legislature. Family has been in the grocery business for about 70 years, and we still own a supermarket in Coolidge. And I currently work at National Bank of Arizona as the Community Sales Development Officer there, where I work with small businesses almost entirely and helped guide many through the PPP process over the summer. So look forward to chatting today.
Thank you, Senator Shope. Representative Hernandez.
Thanks, Eric. I'm excited to be on the panel with my friends, Senator Shope and Senator Bowie. I actually work a lot with them, even though they're both over in the Senate. My name is Representative Daniel Hernandez, and I'm a state representative for District Number 2, which includes all of Santa Cruz County, the southeast part of Pima County, and the city of South Tucson. So I have Davis Mountain Air Force Base, Green Valley, Sahuarita, which have seen a lot of growth over the last couple of years. And they are just outside of the Tucson area, where we're starting to see the need for more economic development and more opportunities for folks in a lot of these rural communities and semi-rural communities. So I'm excited to be here. I've served in the legislature for the last 5 years, and I'm currently serving on the Education and on the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Representative Hernandez. And just a little fun fact about Representative Hernandez. He serves with his sister in the state legislature, so we affectionately refer to them collectively as the Hernandi. So let's jump into questions. Gentlemen, the pandemic has had a significant effect on your work at the state. What were your priorities going into the pandemic in 2020, and how have they changed in light of the pandemic? And let's start with Senator Bowie.
Well, yeah, if you go back to a little over a year ago, when we started the 2020 legislative session, my colleagues will, I think, vouch for this, a much different budget picture. We had a budget surplus of about $1 billion. And to put that into context, our state budget is usually around 12 to $13 billion. So the governor in January of last year outlined a lot of very ambitious things to do with some of those dollars, including a lot of infrastructure projects around the state, investments in education and broadband, rural broadband across the state. So a lot of things that we wanted to do, but obviously the pandemic changed all of that. We ended up passing what's called a skinny budget, which was a very bare bones, only funding, basic things because we didn't know what the budget outlook was going to look like, what tax revenues were going to look like. So we didn't do a lot. So going into that pandemic, I had a lot of the same priorities I still do in looking at economic development. Arizona is very competitive with a lot of other states. When you look at our tax structure, our tax rates, you look at our regulatory environment, Arizona has done a really good job over the years, passing a lot of policies that were bipartisan to make Arizona a great place to live, work, and play. But there are some things that I think we still need to do, and that starts with education, particularly investments in higher education, in our community colleges or universities. Arizona has cut more from higher education than any state in the country since 2008. And there's been a real effort over the years to try to focus more on that, to try to focus investments in our universities. They have a great initiative this year called the New Economy Initiative, which would make targeted investments in things like the engineering school at ASU, the medical school at U of A. Those are really important investments for our state. Investments in our community colleges, investments in workforce development. We need to be focused on bringing high-paying jobs to Arizona. I mean, not just call center jobs, those are important too. But if we really want to compete well with other states and compete internationally, we really have to make a lot of these investments. So those are things that I've been advocating for this year. There's been a lot of talk about tax reform. I'm open to that conversation as well. But I think making some of these investments in economic development, in workforce development, are going to be really critically important for Arizona to be competitive, not just this year, but for many years to come.
Thank you. Senator Shope.
Yeah, look, I think that Senator Bowie nailed a few things there for sure. If we go back to a year ago, especially maybe a year and 2 months ago, when we really began to experience what life may look like, and really a whole host of unknowns at the time, especially for businesses and people just living their daily life. We were at about $800 million surplus, as was mentioned, to a JLBC projected anywhere from $500 million to $1.5 billion deficit within the span of a couple weeks. Obviously, that didn't pan out, and we find ourselves in a much better situation than we thought it could have been, largely because our just economic activity ended up being better than many other places. And obviously the infusion of cash from Washington, D.C. has helped out. So we, look at things that I was interested in a year ago, many of which are still interest of mine, because as Mr. Bowie mentioned, the skinny budget that was passed really meant that none of us were able to take care of the priorities budget related that we had, such as, for me, for example, expanding Interstate 10 between Phoenix and Casa Grande, especially because of the cross traffic that exists already with folks in Pinal County going to work at places like Intel and other places in the South and Southeast Valley. But the future cross traffic that will exist when Lucid actually begins rolling cars off the assembly line at some point this year, and when Nikola is done doing things in Coolidge at some point in the near future. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things that were focuses, I would say, a year ago or a year and a half ago, as far as budget, that are still focuses for many of us. But obviously, inclusive of that are other things that we didn't contemplate, such as maybe some healthcare related things. I think Mr. Bowie mentioned the New Economy Initiative. A lot of that, what Arizona State and Arizona were able to do as far as rapidly setting up COVID tests, the research that was being done at the U of A as well, things like that. If you look at a district like mine, where mining is still a major component of employment, the new mining school at the U of A, which is a part of that whole initiative. These are important things, and these are things that we're hopefully going to be able to achieve here in the next, I think the budget, we should release that by June 32nd, I think is the date.
Thank you, Senator. And way to weave in those other schools other than just the Arizona State Sun Devils.
I know. Yeah, it's sometimes difficult for me.
Representative Hernandez.
I think the two gentlemen have said a lot of the same things that I would have echoed. So just to kind of say something a little bit different, I think my priority going into the pandemic that was slightly different than what's already been mentioned is strengthening our healthcare infrastructure, particularly in some of the areas where it's a little bit harder for folks to access. So I represent a semi-rural area called Green Valley, and I say semi-rural because they get mad when I call it rural. They have this large retirement community in Green Valley, but they're 29 miles away from the nearest hospital in Tucson. And they have a hospital in the middle of the district, right in the middle of Green Valley. And during the pandemic, because it is 29 miles and not 35 miles away from the next nearest hospital, it didn't qualify for federal dollars for rural access hospitals. So while many of our hospitals across the state were getting an influx of federal dollars and from state dollars, it was being left out in the lurch. And it really exposed, I think, for a lot of folks, that there are areas in our state where, because of these weird little federal guidelines, there are things that folks may not qualify for, whether it's federally qualified health centers that didn't have all the resources that they needed, rural hospitals. So I think strengthening that infrastructure and making sure that we keep those doors open was a critical and important priority for me. Now, a year later, it's still a priority, but we've been able to work in a bipartisan way. I worked with Senator Sinema to secure federal dollars and with Governor Ducey to secure about $5 million just to keep that hospital open. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was broadband is such a huge topic because it cuts across so many different things. It's not just you get to go online and watch movies on Netflix thing, as many folks that are watching this know. It goes to healthcare. When we shifted to telemedicine visits, it is impossible to get a Wi-Fi connection in parts of my district, particularly in southern Arizona and Santa Cruz County. When we had kids go to virtual or having the option of being in person or being virtual, this was an education and economic development and a healthcare issue. So I'm pleased to see that there is bipartisan work being done right now to invest money to make sure that we're growing out that infrastructure. And last year we worked with the co-ops to help expand that network. And then the last thing that I'll say is, when we're looking at this year, my big priority has been working to really make sure that we don't do any reputational harm for the state of Arizona. I think what we keep seeing out of the legislature is a lot of these kind of kookier bills that have a tendency to draw a lot of negative national attention. So while we need to make sure that we have a favorable tax environment and regulatory environment, an important part of economic development that doesn't oftentimes get talked about is making sure that we don't do anything to make Arizona less attractive compared to our neighboring states. Whether it's Utah, Colorado, or Nevada and California, we have to be able to compete for those folks that are leaving California and making sure that we are not making Arizona a place where businesses will say, well, they're passing these kind of crazy bills that we don't want to be associated with. Let's just hop over to Texas, or let's hop over to Nevada. So I think reputational harm and protecting Arizona's economy are intricately tied together, and we need to make sure that we put more focus on that this upcoming session.
Thank you.
Sort of a tie into the last question. How has Arizona been able to weather the storm of the pandemic and still grow in population and also grow some economic development sectors? Senator Shope, do you want to start?
Yeah, you bet. I think that, look, we had, one of the things we've seen, I guess, is that is that at different times, different states were affected in different ways by COVID. Obviously, the northeastern United States, and it kind of gravitated elsewhere and into the south, southwest, and such. And the comebacks have come at different times as well. I think that what you've seen right now is that our comeback, and maybe into Texas, and I think even into Nevada. I have friends that were just up there recently. It has happened a little quicker in this time of year for us, but and I think the other states are going to catch up. A lot of it has to do with relative openness of the state, relative I think probably different attitudes in different areas. I can tell you right now, when I spoke to the folks at the Lodging and Tourism Association, and I kept up with them pretty often, at the beginning of the pandemic, you'd have 5% occupancy maybe in the Phoenix or Tucson metro area. However, on the Colorado River coast, you had hotels and motels doing business that would never be seen in the months of May, June, July, August. And the on-running thing when we would speak to those folks would be people literally wanted to go out and have dinner. And they were willing to drive 2 hours, stay at a hotel, and then drive back. People got innovative. My goodness, I am so amazed at the innovation that restaurateurs, different folks in the lodging and tourism industry have come through. And a lot of that, we were able to free up some dollars, for example, for people to expand their outside dining areas, people to expand some of the outdoor activities that people have. And I think that was all very helpful. And it was still probably not enough, but it all came together to, I think, really help out. I think our tourism industry is still trying to recover. A lot of employment issues right now. Obviously, even if you have a favorite restaurant, odds are they may only be open 5 or 6 days a week at the moment because of a lack of workers. And part of that is that people truly still maybe don't want to be integrated fully into society at this moment, and or the unemployment situation. So there's a lot of factors at play, a lot of things that helped us out. We had some neighbors that were probably a little bit more closed off than we were, and we can argue what the healthcare aspects were of that. And obviously, we experienced some very difficult and trying times over the summer. But I can, the economic perspective of it is that, yeah, the fact is we were able to go ahead and weather the storm on that front. But it took a lot of innovation and a lot of loss and heartache for the people in those businesses.
Thank you. Yeah, Representative Hernandez, how is Arizona able to weather the storm?
I think one of the things that has made Arizona not only weather the storm, but also prepare for the influx of people who are leaving other places like California is, one, housing. But what we're seeing is, as we have people moving in, the housing prices are getting higher and the stock is diminishing. The fact that you can buy a home with an acre of land or half an acre, where if you were in California, you'd have like a 700 square foot apartment, I think is a big factor. So we have the land, we have 3 amazing universities with ASU, the U of A, and NAU. We also have, I think, a favorable environment where if you are somebody who comes to Arizona, you don't need to have been here for generations to be able to start a business, to build a successful organization, or to even run for office. We've seen people who moved to Arizona within 10 years are running for office. So really, I think Arizona is a land of opportunity where you don't have to have been here for a very long time to be able to get your roots established and to get yourself on your feet. So that's why I think Arizona is, I think, at a particularly interesting intersection right now, where we are seeing that some of the things that brought people to the state are now going to be challenges that we're going to have moving forward. So that housing piece, how do we make sure that not only do we have folks coming in from California, from New York, from other places, and buying up that housing, but that we're creating enough affordable housing in the long term to make sure that we're taking care of those folks who are living in our communities already. And then when we're talking about the universities, how do we make sure that we put in that funding and that investment? Because the only way that our universities will continue to be successful is if we actually invest in them. And they are such big economic drivers, from the mining school that Mr. Shope mentioned to the engineering school that Mr. Bowie mentioned. These are all going to be parts of building the jobs of the future. So when we're looking at the biotech industry, the high-tech manufacturing industry, these are all things that our universities are going to be necessary to make sure that we graduate enough people so that we can have those jobs be filled once they start coming up.
Great. Senator Bowie, do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, Arizona is a great place to be when you look at the weather most of the year. You look at the regulatory environment, the tax environment, especially I think you're seeing more and more folks looking to leave more expensive places to live on the coast and in bigger cities throughout the country. They're looking at Arizona, as Representative Hernandez said. Housing has become a really important issue. 10 or 20 years ago, folks were moving here and it was really cheap to buy a house, and that's how the suburbs got built, including in my district and others. But we have a problem now with affordable housing that absolutely needs to be addressed in the budget and in terms of policy. But to answer the question is, what we've done to be successful. I think when you look at our budget, our budget this year, we're doing really well right now in terms of dollars. I think there are some things that we've done as a legislature that have contributed to that. Several years ago, we approved something around the Wayfarer decision from the Supreme Court, which is now collecting sales tax revenue, TPT revenue from online purchases. That's had a really big impact, not just on our state budget, but also our city and our county budgets as well. So finally getting that done has really made a significant impact. And then in terms of policy, one thing that I'll mention just here in my neck of the woods, we approved a manufacturing tax credit extension that goes to support manufacturing jobs. My largest employer is Intel. They just announced a $20 billion investment in the East Valley in Chandler. That's going to create thousands, again, like I said earlier, of those high paying quality jobs in our community. And when companies like that look at Arizona, whether it's Intel, whether it's Honeywell, whether it's Lucid Motors, TSMC, all these companies, it's not just those companies coming here, it's suppliers and all of the ancillary businesses that work with them as well. So those are the kind of investments we need to be making, looking at not just investments, but also tax credits, incentive programs. Those programs pay for themselves. So we've done a lot of good things in the legislature. I argue we need to do more, but I think we're going in the right direction. And I think that's partly due to some of the bipartisan work that we've done at the legislature over the last couple of years.
Each of you gentlemen talked about market and touched on supply and demand. Senator Shope, with your comments about workforce, Representative Hernandez, your comments about housing stock. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you guys are seeing in your districts relative to jobs? Are employers having a tough time? Is it specific to industries? Is there not a problem? I mean, you three represent diverse districts. Senator Bowie, yours is largely urban. Representative Hernandez, yours is Southern Arizona. Senator Shope, yours Central Arizona, both rural and urban to a degree. Can you talk about what you're seeing in terms of workforce and jobs in each of your districts? And let's start with Representative Hernandez.
Sorry, forgot to take the mute off. I think it really varies by industry and in what part of my district you're talking about, because you have things like the Tucson marketplace, which is in my district, that just opened up a big giant Geico facility, and then shortly thereafter everybody moved to virtual and to remote work. So they built out this giant new facility, hundreds of new employees, and then everybody had to work from home. So when we're looking at some of the businesses, particularly in the Tucson area, I know that there has been a real reimagining of how they're going to go to work, and a question on, do we need to have big facilities and office spaces? So that's one question in the Tucson area. But then I go down to Nogales, into Santa Cruz County, and we are just economically depressed, is putting it mildly, because we're seeing that because of the closure of the US-Mexico border for regular tourism and just vacation travel, we've seen a significant decline. So we're seeing business shuttering on the US-Mexico border because we're just not getting the traffic that we used to get between between Mexico and the US. And then I go a little bit further east where I have agricultural areas, and it's how do we get a regulatory environment where the counties are not doing things that are making it harder for our burgeoning wine industry. So I have three very different pockets of areas, and each one has their own unique needs. But the number one through line is we need to have responsive government, particularly at the state and local level. And that we really need to make sure that we are encouraging and growing some of these unique businesses that are really truly unique to Arizona. So whether it's our produce industry, which if we don't have it in Nogales, is going to go to Texas or going to go to California. So we need to make sure that we really strengthen that core for produce in Nogales. And then in some of our areas where we have agricultural lands, that we're really partnering with our counties to make sure that we lessen the burden on them to be the regulator who's having to go into every back room to make sure that every bottle of wine is being taken care of when that's already being done by the FDA. So I think the big thing is having government that's more responsive and making sure that we are listening to the needs of the folks in our communities and really looking at how do we make these long-term infrastructure investments, because the one thing that every single group, whether it's the agriculture, the business offices, or the folks in Nogales with produce, is make sure we have drivable roads, because we have a huge problem in Southern Arizona with infrastructure, particularly the lack of investment because of the raiding of HERF funds for almost a decade.
Thank you. Senator Shope, your family has a keen interest in produce and agriculture. What are you experiencing in your district in terms of jobs?
It's kind of a tale, I think, similar to Mr. Hernandez, and I guess this is maybe a difference between an urban district versus a semi-rural, semi-urban. I don't think anyone would argue places like Casa Grande or what you would consider rural anymore. The idea that you do have large employers moving in. One of the things is workforce training for us. And the governor, I was with him 3 weeks ago, I think it was. We were at Central Arizona College opening a workforce training center, and it's really geared towards the automotive industry. And who would have thought even 10 years ago we would be going down that path in places like Central Arizona College. But that is going to be a major thing. At build out, Lucid will employ 10,000 people in Casa Grande. The population of Casa Grande is 60,000. So those folks are going to have to come from somewhere. They're going to have to be trained from somewhere and by somebody. And it's going to be up to us. I know it was mentioned earlier about university funding. And obviously the one that doesn't get talked about nearly as much, but probably should. And it's probably because it's, the university system is a board of regents, big three function. But our colleges could really definitely use a boost. And I remember a trip to Honeywell. This has been about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were looking at some things. And I remember asking one of the engineers who was with us, and obviously so many of these functions, whether it's the future of mining and extraction of minerals or the future of building cars, both in LD8, are going to be so much done by robotics, so much done by somebody with a handheld that is really that a machine is doing the work. And the folks there at Honeywell told me is that we always talk about the engineers that build these things, the engineers and the people that do the fab work, things like that. We don't talk enough about the college grad or certificate earner that is going to come in and fix the machine when and if it needs repairs, when it needs to be upgraded, things like that. So those are the things that are going to be in dire need, as well as but it's in almost a nationwide dearth of engineers going forward. So we're going to see it very acutely here in Arizona, because yes, we have, congratulations to everybody watching this, because you all are in the economic development business. You have helped us completely change our economy that used to be just based on home building into something that requires this type of thinking and this type of foresight for what the challenges of the future are.
Thank you. Senator Bowie, Urban District, you've got Honeywell in your district. And a lot of those businesses that supply Honeywell and provide the services needed to support the population. What are you seeing in terms of jobs in your district?
Right, Honeywell is my second largest employer, so shout out to Honeywell. Before I forget, I want to touch on something that Senator Shope said. When we talk about our community colleges, I know I mentioned it earlier too, and our community colleges in Maricopa and Pima counties receive zero funding from the state. I hope that's fixed in the budget this year. We just passed a really important bill for community colleges. I think all three of us voted for it, so I'm allowed to talk about it. That would now allow, for the first time ever, it's been decades in the making, that would allow our community colleges to offer 4-year degrees, which is a really big deal that I think is going to help with economic development. I think there are specific programs that specific community colleges do really well in throughout the state, not just Maricopa and Pima, but our rural areas as well. So very excited we were able to get that done. As far as the job outlook, my district is kind of an outlier because it's one of the higher income districts in the state. So we have a lot of tech companies here. We mentioned Intel, we mentioned Honeywell, a lot of ASU employees. My district is just south of the university, so a lot of their engineers and biodesign folks live down here. So a little bit of a different impact. I think a lot of folks have been working from home. So those office locations, I know as mentioned earlier, that's a really pressing issue in urban downtowns, whether those office spaces are going to be used in the long term, but even in some of the suburban office parks in my district, I drive by them and parking lots are empty. So folks are working from home. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on as well. I think you have a lot of folks who like working from home, who can do their jobs from home. So will companies need as big of an office space, and what kind of impact is that going to have on local tax revenue? And how is that going to impact our cities? I think you have a lot of them when you ask the question about, employers and are they looking to hire people? I think there's kind of a false narrative out there that some folks don't want to go back to work. And that, they're receiving unemployment benefits or other benefits, they don't want to go back to work. But I think another factor too is a lot of folks are scared to go back to work in person. Maybe they're working remotely and maybe they're offered something that's in person and they're reluctant to do that. So I think getting this pandemic under control should be top of mind, and making sure that workplaces are safe and they're taking the proper precautions, that folks are getting vaccinated. I think all of those things should be top of mind. Once we get to a place where we've hit herd immunity or come close, I think the economy is going to come roaring back later this year, and that's obviously going to be good for economic development.
Thank you for that. Carrie?
Yeah, Senator Shope, you mentioned that earlier you talked about I-10, and you've been an advocate for widening I-10 and infrastructure development in your career. Given the size of the budget surplus, what's being done to address states' infrastructure needs?
Well, great question. First off, there was an announcement about 2 months ago. It's hard to believe because we're already in, getting close to, we're in early May, I guess. So, but that the governor was freeing up some of the dollars from, CARES and such. 30, I think the number was 32 million for the replacement of the bridge at Gila River on Interstate 10. And we have a bill that is in the House and a budget request of an additional $50 million for that project. I know the Maricopa Association of Governments is looking very closely at what they would like to do north of that bridge with that. And I got to say, look, all of this is once again possible because of the cooperation and the friendship and the relationships that have been built that took a lot of time, frankly, between ADOT and the Gila River Indian community and Governor Stephen Lewis of that community, who's obviously I spent quite a bit of time with this year working on a different bill. So, but it's been a pleasure to do that. Other areas also received a lot of dollars. I know that in preparation of what Interstate 11 could look like, we took another stab at additional funds between Las Vegas and Kingman. in that same appropriation there from those CARES Act dollars. And I know that Representative Cobb, that continues to be a priority of hers, to make that stretch of highway and every single improvement that is done on that highway interstate ready for going forward, which is important, obviously. So no, there's a lot of infrastructure on the freeway side, highway side, and I think broadband was mentioned earlier. When you're doing these major highway projects, it's a perfect time to get into the ground and start running cable as well. So the broadband infrastructure is a necessity. I'm lucky. I live in Coolidge. Everybody that lives Coolidge in Florence and to the west of there are in great shape in LD8. You go about 5 miles east of Florence, and it's a dead zone for the most part. So what that does to education, what that does to just running a credit card at a store, the amount of time that it takes just to even do the simple things that we take for granted on a daily basis, frankly, are oftentimes difficult. So no, I think we're in good shape as far as that goes. I'm going to keep pushing like hell. And I know these two guys here, whether or not they end up voting for the final product, I know they are in full support, and it really helps me out a lot.
Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Eric.
Start over, Eric.
There we go. Senator Bowie, I know you've been an advocate for the I-10 expansion too, probably to get Representative Hernandez to the Capitol faster and safer. But
that's just so he doesn't have to spend as much time with his sister in the car, probably.
There you go.
That's why we drive separately.
Yeah. How's that going to benefit your district, Senator Bowie?
Well, yeah, I was already planning to give a shout out for that project. Senator Shope and I like to joke, it connects our two districts. For me, Ahwatukee and Chandler, and down in Casa Grande. I drove on that road a couple of weeks ago, and I can assure you that widening it should be an important investment in our state budget. It's a really important economic development tool. We talked about Lucid Motors and some of the jobs that are coming to Casa Grande, also to the Gila River Indian community that's just south of my district. So it's going to help with commerce. It's going to help transporting goods. It's going to encourage more commerce in that area. So I'm very much in support of that. We have a lot of infrastructure projects around the state that need to be a priority. And that's partly due to lack of investment over the years, the HERF funds, like Representative Hernandez mentioned, being rated over the years. So these are really good projects for one-time dollars. There's a lot of talk at the Capitol of, oh, we have all these dollars available. A lot of them are one-time. So you shouldn't cut taxes with one-time money. But what you can do with one-time money is make a lot of these investments that some of them are shovel ready. Some might take a few months or a year to get ready, but they create jobs. They're good for economic development. They're good for our state's infrastructure. It's really a win-win. So my hope is we'll have some significant investments in infrastructure in the budget, starting, of course, with the Shope-Bowie Expressway connecting LD18 and LD8.
Representative Hernandez, can you talk a little bit about the infrastructure needs in your district?
Yeah, so we are lucky that we are expanding some of the state routes down in southern Arizona, making them larger so that we can faster and more efficiently get the produce from Mexico to the US. So I think that's a huge thing for us. But we also see that while we are expanding certain state routes that will get us onto the I-10 or the I-19 faster, there's a lot of work to be done, especially expanding it, because there are so many areas where there's just bottleneck. So I think one of the big things that we really need to be pushing for is expanding where it makes sense and repaving and redoing entire sections of the I-10 and the I-19 to make sure that we can get them onto the highway, but once they're on the highway, that they actually make it to where they need to go. And when I've talked to people in the produce industry, they're routinely bringing this up because a lot of times the trucking becomes a lot more expensive when you're having to drive on roads, where you're having to replace axles and having to do a lot more repairs, because they're coming here and saying, Well, if we go to Texas, they just built a brand new road for us. It's going to make it easier for us to travel. So we need to make sure that we are competing and out-competing Texas. Otherwise, we're going to start losing some of that produce business.
Senator Bowie, you sit on two committees that are integral for economic development. What bills are you most proud of in this session that have come through either of these committees, the Commerce or Finance?
I mentioned earlier the manufacturing tax credit bill. That was really, really important for my district and for the state. Glad we were able to get that done. Intel is going to be breaking ground later this year on that $20 billion investment. Another bill that we passed, I don't want to steal his thunder because it was his bill, but it came before Commerce. So I'll give him a shout out. Senator Shope was a very integral part of the gaming bill that passed this year. That's going to legalize online sports betting. It's something a lot of other states have done. There was kind of a black market for it. So it's really exciting that we've legalized that now. There's going to be more casinos opening throughout the state. They're going to be offering more games. So from an economic development perspective, I think that's really important. We can better compete with Nevada and California and have more tax dollars that we're collecting that can go into our state budget and fund things like education and so on. So I want to give him a shout out for that. Another bill that I think was really important, we talked about housing before. We've got some affordable housing bills that went through those committees, and affordable housing tax credit. My hope is we'll be able to get that in the budget. I think that's an economic development tool as well. If we have folks that want to move to Arizona, if they can't afford to live here, that's a problem. So focusing on that. So those would be a couple of the bills that we've done. And then I really hope we have a strong budget this year from an economic development perspective so we can continue this momentum and continue to pass good policy and create more high-paying jobs here in Arizona.
Thank you.
Representative Hernandez, do you want to talk a little bit about bills throughout your career that you've been particularly proud of, or issues that may have made their way into other bills that you've been particularly proud of?
You know, when I'm looking at economic development opportunities, I think one of the things that I've been proud of is working in a bipartisan manner, particularly with folks like Representative Shope and Senator Bowie. Sorry, I'm so used to Representative Shope. Senator Bowie.
No, it's Senator Shope.
You can call him Freshman Shope. Just
That's right.
A little bit
That's
of
right.
hazing. But there have been a couple of times where we've seen that the far left opposes something and the far right opposes something. And it's those of us who are saying, okay, let's knock that off. What's good for Arizona? So when it comes to issues like the angel investor tax credit, which we had to approve a couple years ago, when we looked at the qualified facilities tax credit, it happened last year and then it happened again this year, where it stalled. And it literally was us who were in the middle getting ready to put our sleeves up and just get to work to really make sure that we found a compromise that was good for Arizona, to make sure that we were bringing in more business, bringing in more investment. But what it also meant is that we had to make certain investments that a lot of the times it's hard for us to kind of get done at the Capitol, because you have the people on the far right who say we shouldn't be picking winners and losers. And then you have the people on the far left who say no more tax credits, no more tax cuts, no more subsidies, no more of this. So we have to find ways to kind of say, okay, we're going to leave those people on either side yelling at each other while we're focusing on what will make sure that Arizona's economy is one that can thrive. So working on some of these issues like tax credits, working on things like 2 years ago, Senator Bowie and I worked with Gina Cobb, the chair of appropriations, and Senator Fan to expand things like putting money into the budget for counselors and social workers, because we were hearing from schools that school resource officers were important, but that they also wanted flexibility. So there have been a lot of opportunities. And I think for me, the number one thing is always, how can we work together in a bipartisan way? Because that's where most of the good policy comes from, when we're able to work, even if that means leaving some of the people on the far left or the far right off a bill to focus on what's getting the work done for the people of Arizona.
Thank you. Senator Shope, as you look back at your career in the House and now you're a freshman in the Senate, what issues or what bills are you most proud of that you've worked on so far?
Well, obviously, I think Senator Bowie mentioned gaming is probably, I'm sure that it'll be in about 20 years, I'll be at a ball game and somebody's going to be next to me saying, hey, let's, want to place a bet on this thing. And I'm going to think to myself, we're able to do this because we had, was able to sponsor something. And I had colleagues like Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Bowie who were there every step of the way to make sure that it got accomplished. So that's going to be huge. But there's been other things we've done. I think all the stuff that we've done in regards to, for example, the bill this year that allowed things like Intel's expansion to occur. We've done that, a few times over my time, and each time it's been very successful. The program is so successful that you need to expand it even more, et cetera. So, I look forward to more things like that. What was it, 2 years ago? If anybody's not been to, with Mr. Hernandez on here right now, if anybody's not been to downtown Tucson and recently, and obviously pandemic aside, but the difference that's been made by programs, especially like Rio Nuevo and what garnered their extension over the last, couple years. And that was another one where we had, you have the fringe elements on either side, for the most part opposed, and you had to have folks meet in the middle to get something accomplished. But those are the big things that really make a difference in communities, and those are the things that are moving the state forward, I would say, and not just the state as a whole, but really changing certain areas of communities for the better. Now you have, like in that section of Tucson, a burgeoning downtown. We've seen what happens there. I mean, all you have to do is go to Phoenix, and the only problem I have is I can't ever find any place to park whenever I want to get my hair cut. But other than that, I'll go ahead and take it. I'll just go at awkward times.
Yeah, thank you. I really like what you guys said, especially because, at AED, we really want to put forward good policy that both parties can get behind. And I think that's really important. And I think all three of you have done a great job in doing that. And I really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up here, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to join us today and speak to the Arizona Association for Economic Development community. Before we leave, I'm going to ask you to do something that may be the most hardest thing you've done today. But in one word, what do you say is the key to the future of economic development success in Arizona? One word. We'll go with Senator Shope.
I think I said it earlier, diversification.
There we go. Representative Hernandez.
Investments.
Ooh, good one. Senator Bowie.
I was going to do a joke here and say strategery, but I agree with Representative Hernandez. I was going to say it's investment in the future, or just investment for one word.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all three of you for being here today. We look forward to working with you in the future, especially as we close out the session in 2 years or whenever it might happen, but on future economic development issues as well. So thank you. And of course, thank you, Eric, for co-moderating with me.
Thank you, panelists. I'm Carla Moran, Chair of the AAD Policy Impact Celebration and Senior Project Manager at SRP, and today's title sponsor. This event is important because it recognizes that public policy can create a sound economic development foundation that enables Arizona to continue to grow a vibrant economy and robust quality of life. On behalf of AAD and SRP, I'd like to thank you for joining us at this event this year. And again, thank you to our title sponsor, SRP, capital sponsor, APS, legislative sponsor, Tana Marana, City of Phoenix, and TEP. And congratulations to all of our winners.
Thank you.